Friends on the dais and friends in the audience. Well, thank you for this. First of all, I think it's a great initiative by AICTE, and we're thankful that IIM Bangalore could sort of be part of this, along with IIM Trichy and Deva University. Yeah, I think there are multiple dimensions of trying to see what is this Bharatiya management and why this sort of a paradigm has to come in. Well, first of all, I think the way the workshop has been conceptualized itself presents some good thought. Of course, personally, I'm not, I have some ideas, and of course, I have belief that this is something that is extremely important in the sort of management, research, teaching, whatever we need to be doing in India. I would just, delve a little bit into current management practices and context unique to India, because I think in some ways, for a large part of my career, that's what I have been thinking about. Of course, I think all the other dimensions are important, and in fact, we have some very good scholars at IIM Bangalore on some of the other dimensions, which I think you will get to hear them. Okay, so first thing I find is, of course, India, population density, and be it need, be it faith, whatever. I mean, there are multiple situations where crowds come in, and I think I'm not sure that the emphasis on dealing with, even starting with the principle of valuing time of people has sufficiently come in. Just to give you a simple example, airport designs in India are adopted by and large, because we go for global bids and so on, the way often in Western countries, where the meet and greet culture is not as significant as it is in India. The per capita for every person moving out or coming in, the number of people who come in otherwise is much higher. And so you have airports where people who come to meet and greet are just left out. And sometimes in the logic of security or whatever, we don't even provide basic facilities. So that's a concern. And I think it, in terms of the planning of physical facilities. Queuing models. Of course, these become important when we want to manage all this. Of course, there are lots of queuing models and, lots of math behind queuing and all that. But I'll give you an example of a particular kind of queuing situation that happens in the Indian context, which at least I haven't seen a model that deals with it, and I just call it hysteresis. It's the example where you may have multiple servers. Or look at, when an airport security line or ticket windows anywhere, and there comes a time maybe when one of the counters has nobody there. Now, given the insecurity with which we all come in, we think that is a non-functional counter just because there's nobody there. And the newcomers simply keep joining where they see a queue. And the server there is often very happy not to call people over, until the situation actually arises. And so there is an effective loss in capacity. Now, one is to be able to model this or bring it to the notice, and how do you actually improve the overall queuing performance. So anyway, these are just some thoughts in how the Indian context needs to be addressed. The other aspect of Indian context is, of course, a significant share of the economy due to the unorganized sector. And in fact, it's a huge opportunity of risk and entrepreneurial orientation, because the entire unorganized sector, they survive very largely on this. While for the organized sector, we do talk about managing risks and building entrepreneurship and so on, you have this large base that is already existing in India. Of course, now people are noticing it. At least there's one person whose YouTube videos I would recommend you could see, and there is this ex-army officer called, actually my namesake, called Captain Raghuram, who, he's trying to bring in attention to this, and I've just, conceptualizing from some of his videos actually, he talks about how they have a much better return on investment, speed of decision making, or their effectiveness of supply chains, their fluidity in execution, trust with which they operate, especially amongst themselves as a community. Again, equal opportunity employer, very often, because they just need to get things done. So anyway, he calls it as India unincorporated, and there's a lot of lessons to learn there. Of course, the question in my mind is that, where, of course, if you really want to have better margins, maybe scale is important. Would they scale up? That can be an interesting question. Should they even scale up? Because will some of these things go away? Though we talk of them as good concepts in a regular management organization, I have no answers, but I think there are things to learn from there, and there are things we need to contribute to this group, because 90% of the labor workforce is really in the unorganized sector, and they contribute about 50% of India's GDP. Okay, so that's a second aspect. Now, the third interesting thing is, of course, we have evolved organizational forms that I think are unique to the Indian context, where the India Uninc and the India Inc. have been married reasonably well. One of the best examples, of course, is the start of the milk cooperatives and the Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Federation. From just before independence, they got started. And then, of course, those concepts went into the National Dairy Development Board and got spread out to all the other states. Jaipur rugs is another classic example. Of course, there are other countries, I guess, in a way, Benetton, they talk about the same thing, where you have organized in the front end of the supply chain, but in the back end, you do have the unorganized home people contributing to this. Of course, we also have disaggregated front end, where the selling or delivery can happen in that manner. So anyway, organized retail, again, big basket, the way they do the sourcing, or for that matter, any other organized retail. Again, the combination of the unorganized sector and the organized sector. Trucking companies is another example, because most trucking companies own a small share of the trucks with which they do business. The large part comes from single owner operators, and there are reasons why there is an apparent equilibrium in the way that market operates. Maybe for many users today who want to move up the value chain, they feel this is not the best way, because the tendency becomes more one of cost optimization rather than value optimization. So, we want branding. So again, at least the trucking sector I know is currently going through a self sort of questioning about what is the right size and what is the sort of right mix of the unorganized and the organized. Okay, some other cultural concepts which for me it's purely observational. I'm sure there's a lot more scholarship out here that can get into this. But relatively, I think in the Indian context, maybe the way we are brought up, there's role boundedness is more, lack of equals. I mean, I know I suffered that for a long time, and because we don't view people who, in the way we are brought up as being at the same level, you have to place somebody either, in some sense above you, from whom who you listen to, or you have to place people below you, whom you can tell that this is how things should be. But I think maybe a lot better comes out when we are able to recognize a sense of equals. And I think there are cultural issues. Of course, there's a lot of sense of otherworldliness, paternalistic leadership, maybe recognizing there are multiple stakeholders, implicit acceptance of norms, not really questioning norms. And some of these actually, then there is management by committees, many times, especially in a more organized context, not wanting to take responsibility of a decision, legal referral in the organized sector, because again, contracts, whatever, we don't work so much on trust. We always want to refer it to a third party, and I can tell you in the infrastructure domain, India, much more than other countries, we go to legal referral and want to get things sorted out by a legal opinion, and it therefore slows down things. But anyway, these are, I think, some things that again in the Indian context. Of course, so use of Indian cases becomes useful because then at least it provides a scope for reflection. For whatever it is, I think even in IIMs, I think it's unfortunate that maybe because of convenience, we just find it easier to download a Harvard case or any other case, or we seek legitimacy of our cases by putting it up in those maybe better organized websites. But one thing I can say is I've spent most of my life in writing cases in the Indian context, and actually have been developed courses around that. In fact, it gives one a tremendous sense of confidence of developing courses. So whether it's in the infrastructure domain or in the logistics domain, and there are certain things which are very unique. I mean, the way taxation drives behavior and organizations, I think, is far more significant in the Indian context. Of course, lack of something called a warehouse. So the idea of a warehouse only now, is gaining some importance. Otherwise, you can still see LPG cylinders will come in a large truck and just in some street corner will get unloaded into, smaller vehicles for further distribution. So anyway, I think these are certain realities. Either we address them or the issues have to recognize it and then we need to navigate through. So these are some interesting management challenges in the Indian context. Fine. So those were sort of my little thoughts because I think context is important and we need to challenge ourselves. Certain contexts are good, we need to build on it. Certain contexts probably are not good, and we need to sort of see how, or develop a strong desire in our students in the ecosystem to want to change. And I think that's a responsibility of management education. Okay, of course, in terms of ancient Indian wisdom, I picked up 3 courses at IIM Bangalore. I think at least 2 of the faculty who offer those courses are right here. So we have management paradigms from Bhagavad Gita. We have spirituality and self-development for global managers, and I think we have introduction to Hindu philosophy. There may be, I hope I haven't missed any, which I think sort of squarely fits this idea of management and ancient Indian wisdom. Of course, it's interesting that we still, while thoughts are coming in, and I know some of our faculty now are presenting papers that draw from this, but it first goes to the Academy of Management, and maybe the Academy of Management in some sense has to legitimize, or or a Western framework has to legitimize, and then, we are okay to adopt it. I don't know, maybe there is a fundamental scientific paradigm, fundamental paradigm of validation, whatever it is. But I think that's a challenge for all of us, because there is tremendous conceptual knowledge out there, and if one goes back to the stories or the writings or, and even at times when maybe written word was not there, how such concepts evolved. I mean, it's really fascinating to be able to think about the clarity with which rich concepts have come in. Right. So, of course, institutions find it easy at the highest level to draw inspiration from Indian thought. So, I started my schooling in Kendriya Vidyalaya which says Tattvam Pushanapa Brunu, and then went on to an institution that says Siddhir Bhavati Karmaja as the primary motto. Large part of my career, Vidya Vinyoga Vikasaha, and currently, Tejas Vinavaditamastu. Wonder sometimes we stop at that level. We find it very comfortable. All institutions find it comfortable to bring that in, but somehow we don't go much further from that. In fact, concerns are also in recruitment, right? Today, if we want to recruit a faculty at IIM who's doing good work in this, there is still skepticism. It's quite okay that a faculty comes in operations management or in economics or whatever, and during the part of their career, they move into this domain, because they're already within the system, it's fine. But, when are we going to, again, bring legitimacy into looking at that faculty who look at these things and actually build on these concepts is the way to go. In fact, I know a couple of faculty in IIM Ahmedabad who earlier were doing this were actually viewed as, okay, he's got his way of doing things and fine, we've got to let them do it because they're already in the system. So anyway, I think some of these things also need to change. Fine. I guess on the other part of Indian way of doing research and pedagogy, I think, the way the rishis or whatever developed all these concepts, obviously the whole principle of oral discussion and inquiry and, just honing thoughts maybe by challenging one another, is a format of discovering new concepts. I mean, that's how do we build on that? And then, of course, pedagogy, the concept of a Gurukul, which, of course, today I think some elements of it are coming when we say we should shadow a CEO, so that you imbibe the totality of the person, which is what, in a way, the Gurukul did, or mentoring or coaching. Fine. So, I think there's a lot of richness that is there, and we still need to be unlocking it. I hope, such a fora will take us on that journey further. Okay, well, thank you very much.